Let me talk about some of the options that you can set in a schedule. First off, you can set the user load, which is something I showed in the last lecture. How many users are running, how fast they enter the system, how long you spend at a particular plateau. Another thing you can set as a schedule option is the think time. In a test, you record a think time, but you can also manually override that think time, which is what I did in each of the tests. I set them all to 20 seconds or something. But in a schedule, you can take that recorded think time and you can adjust that as well. And typically what we do is we'll take the test think time and we'll say plus or minus 50%. So that spreads out the user interactions. Not every user is hitting enter every 20 seconds because in the real world, users don't hit enter at the same time or at the same rate. So this allows you to specify an average and a minimum and a maximum amount. Okay, resource monitoring is a way that you set up your systems under test to monitor the resources, which is something you typically want to do because as you add load, the CPU on those systems is going to go up, the disk access is going to go up. So resource monitoring option lets you set that up. For Unix systems, anything that you can get with rstatd, you can get in RPT. For Windows systems, anything that Windows Performance Monitor lets you monitor, RPT can monitor. Statistics is another setting, and that tells RPT how frequently you want to gather statistics, because if you have a long run and you're gathering statistics very often, then your logs will be huge and your disk space will get used up. So as you saw in the previous lecture, if it's a run that's too long, RPT says, why don't you make your statistics gathering less frequent? You don't lose information, it's just how frequent RPT queries for that information. Variable initialization is another option, something that we don't use or I haven't used, but basically a script has variables in it and you can initialize those variables in a schedule. It seems like it would be useful, I just haven't used it. Performance requirements allows you to tell RPT that if response times are greater than 1 second or the 95th percentile is greater than 5 seconds, then flag that as a problem. Now you can also set the performance requirements in a test script. And because different transactions have different expectations of what the response time is, I typically set the performance requirements in the test instead of the schedule, because in a schedule you don't get to say, hey, login should take 4 seconds, but everything else should take 1 second. So I will set the performance requirements in a test and I won't set it in schedule. Test log settings tells RPT how much granularity you want in your test log. And it also says how many users or what percentage of the users you want to monitor. Because if you're running a test with thousands of users, you can't capture every action of every user because it just uses too much disk space. So this test log settings lets you specify what level of detail and how frequently and how many users, what percentage of the users you want to track so closely. Response time breakdown option actually lets you use RPT like a performance profiling tool. It'll show you where your time is being spent inside your system. Seems like a pretty neat feature. I have not used it because we have other profiling tools that we use. Problem determination allows you to specify that you want to track more information if you're in problem determination mode. If you're trying to debug a script, you might want to turn the levels up that you're gathering information about. So problem determination lets you get to that. All right, so let's quickly look through some of what these screens look like. And so there's user load, which is we discussed the other day. Now here's the think time that I discussed. You can use the recorded think time. You can limit the think time to a maximum value, and there are times when you want to do that. And you can specify fixed think time, or you can increase or decrease the recorded think time by percentage. And the one that we typically use is vary the think time by a random percentage, and we'll do it 50 to 150. So that means use a think time that's averages what is recorded, but plus or minus 50%. And then I don't limit the think time to maximum value in most cases. Resource monitoring, as I mentioned, allows you to specify which servers you want to monitor the resources on. I'll show that in more details later. This is the statistics sample interval. The statistics, as I mentioned before, we were gathering too quickly, and so it asked us to increase that time. Variable initialization lets you initialize variables for the test script. And the test log shows you the level of granularity of the things that you want to log. And typically, RPT will just sample a certain number of users to avoid filling logs, or a percentage of users. In general, the defaults are okay there. Sometimes you want to take all on for everything else, or action details will let you actually see the web pages. But it's only going to be on those users that you sample. Response time breakdown, you can enable it. Like I said, I haven't tried that, so I can't get into too much details on that. But it does let you use RPT like a profiling tool. And the problem determination screens allow you to debug and get tons of information, more than you ever wanted out of RPT. So those are the options. And we go to save the schedule, and it tells me I enabled resource monitoring, but I forgot to tell it what to monitor. So let me turn that off so I can save tests.